Well, guys, welcome back to Stalking Shadows. My name is Wayne Dell, and today we are going to dive into how does your professional hunter pick the trophy for you. Right, guys, as you all know, in South Africa, for those who have watched the podcast as we've been growing along, in South Africa, for you to guide an international client, you need to head to a professional hunting school. When I did my license back in the day, it was a 10-day intense course where they put you through the ringer of everything from hosting a guide as an outfitter right through how you approached hunting with a guide, and with the client, as I should say, going around doing all the correct things, all the legal paper and everything that's needed to look after an international client in South Africa. But this podcast is all about how we pick that perfect trophy for an international client. Clients save up their hard-earned money to come out to South Africa to hunt the best possible trophy that they have selected. Be a kudu, an impala, a bushbuck, a duiker, right to Cape buffalo, to dangerous game. They all have that picture, I could say, in their mind of what the perfect animal may be. But going into what the guide can pick you or can find for you in a very limited time period of your South African trip changes that image quite drastically, because also a lot of this is determined on who you're hunting with, what properties you're hunting on, and where your safari may be taking place. Namibia is known for their massive kudu. The Eastern Cape isn't known for massive wide kudu. The terrain and the topography of the place, the thickness of the bush here to being in those open spaces in Namibia, the kudus just grow differently. The horns are much wider in your open veld areas, even throughout the Eastern Cape. You get kudus with these massive, beautiful, wide horns, and then you also get kudu with these very narrow shaped horns. Figure 8 bulls, as we call it in the industry. And this is where, how does your professional hunter pick your trophy for you? So often, guys, we get asked the question of, when clients are out, what is the correct size kudu to hunt? Obviously, we all went to school and we were taught what the minimum requirements were for Roland Ward and SCR. But guys, the reality of everything is your professional hunter takes you out hunting and he solely picks that animal on the basis of age and characteristic. 99% of the time it will be shape that determines the age of the specific animal you're hunting. Typically a kudu bull goes through shape changes throughout the stages of its life. And as a professional hunter, you need to know what shape determines a kudu bull as it's mature enough to hunt. Then obviously you go with body characteristics, size of the neck, the size of the face. And this all changes as you're going through the process. It's the same as when we hunt blue wildebeest and we hunt black wildebeest. There are telltale signs that when you look at a bull to see if he's mature enough to hunt. So let's dive into a few of these species and let's just start with the kudu, as that is mostly what everyone is after on their first trip. So kudu is quite unique because he can be so different in so many different ways with the different shapes you get. Obviously we look for that beautiful spiral that comes to what we call a finished bull, where the horns at the tips will be pointing straight up. Then we get the next variant of the bull. He hooks forward, and then the creme de la creme bull is the one that flares out at the top. And the thing with this is, it all depends on how the kudu bull leaves the base of his head, where his first natural bend takes place on the top of his head. And I've always said to clients, if you are somebody who's after record book or tape measure results, your Roland Ward and your SCI, 99% as well, the uglier the bull, the longer the horn. And I've been lucky enough to shoot a number of 50 plus inch kudu bulls in my lifetime with clients. I myself have yet to exceed the 47 inch mark. I have tried my utmost. I've missed bulls probably closer to 49, but I've yet to have the opportunity at a 50 inch bull. And when you see a 50 inch bull, he will be very wide at the base, because obviously the length is determined by the depth of the bull. And often when they turn and they curl, we always use the ear as a baseline for a kudu bull's length. So if his first bell goes past his ears, you have got great genetics there, and that will show you the depth of that bull, because his neck spiral is going to be extremely deep and he will give you great length. Normally those bulls that bell by the ears will end up being what we call a figure 8. They come extremely narrow at the point, and then they make another bell and they hook pointing in towards each other. So it's got this beautiful round shape at the top and round shape at the bottom, and we call it a figure 8 kudu bull. So the klaar bull, as you would hear the South Africans always say around camp, is what we call the finished bull. And he's the one who's got the beautiful shape. And instead of his horns pointing to each other at the top, they are straight up. And that means he is finished, he's matured. And this normally, guys will probably give me grief about this, normally says the bulls are probably around between the 8 and 10-year-old mark. But obviously we're wanting to shoot mature animals. The bulls need to be older than that. And we look for the hooking forward bull. And that is the creme de la creme. Pretty. He's extremely pretty. But normally you get them where their horns are more narrow, where it's a taller, they curl and they're much taller and narrower and they hook forward. And then that one that deceives everyone when it comes to measurement is the flaring bull. They are absolutely beautiful. They're absolutely spectacular. And I chatted on the last podcast where I misjudged a bull like that hunting with my brother in the Northern Cape. We all said he'd be between the 54 and 56 range bull, but he was that typical. He went wide out, flared out, and from seeing him walking out there carrying this rack on his head, he just looked exceptional. And judging a spiraled horn animal is extremely difficult when you're out in the bush if you have got nothing to judge him against. So hence the reason when we do our course, if I'm not mistaken, we had to be within 4 inches of what we called our measurement out. So what they did with us on course was they stood out at about, I think it was 150 yards or 200 yards, and we had to judge an animal's horn length through our binoculars. As the class teacher had a set of horns there, and he'd hold it up in the air and he'd hold it front onto you, and he'd literally go 1, 2, turn it side on, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then put it down. And that was the amount of time we had to judge that set of horns, what species it was, what length we guessed it at, what Roland Award was, and what SCI was. And that's how they trained us for this job that we do. But the only way to become good at your job of judging horn length and the characteristics is by being out in the bush hunting multiple species. When I was hunting flat out, when I was doing loads of hunts every year, I was extremely good at gauging that animal. And obviously, the less time you spend in the bush, the rougher or rustier you get in calling out a length. And I'll give you a little tip here. If you ask us, any professional hunter to call out a measurement for you when you're out hunting, he isn't going to do it, because it's his head on the line if he gets that wrong to upset you. So hence the reason the method that we use is characteristics to work on age. So often you shoot big bulls and they've bloomed off their horns, and a client's got an exceptional trophy, but he may not even make the 45-inch mark or 40-inch mark. And another thing that I can throw into this spin with hunting and hunting in South Africa is the goldfish effect. So when hunting properties and hunting high fenced ranches, guys, South Africa, Eastern Cape has a lot of high fenced open veld properties to hunt on, and a lot of the time when you're hunting out of our hunting season, I talk about this a lot, you'll be hunting on a high fenced property. So guys have introduced better genetics into the area to get the horns up. The guys have spent money, but the goldfish effect still affects those kudu that have been introduced into those properties. So to give you an example, my uncle has a property, or had a property, that he's recently sold, and it's actually being reverted back into a full-on stock farm and crop farm and everything like that, which seems to be the theme that's happening in South Africa at the moment. Guys are converting game farms back into crop farms. So back in the day, and this even my uncle's place where I grew up hunting, we would hunt kudu with the weights, a carcass weight of 200 kilos. That's roughly 400 pounds or slightly bigger than 400 pounds. They were 250 kg kudu bulls. It was just known to shoot quality big bulls. And we would shoot the 50-inch. My dad shot a 50-inch bull there many a time as a kid. I think my brother's first kudu that he hunted there, if I'm not mistaken, was 47 or 48, but a 200 kg kudu bull after the rut. We're not talking peak rut weights. And my uncle on their property had shot many a kudu bull in that 54 inch before high fences went up. And what happens is, because of the goldfish effect, is when you fence off a property, that kudu used to travel from neighboring property to neighboring property. And what creates horn length? Genetics is only a small part of it. The biggest thing that you need to have horn length is quality of food, high protein, enriched grazing, and that is what gives you quality species. So when you fence an area off, the fence area may be large, but that kudu bull that you hunted on that property now is limited to the quality of feed that he could have eaten if there was no fence. And he could have gone to the neighboring property to eat the best food there, and the neighboring property to eat the best food there when there's a drought, and that's what created great horn length. And it's typical within a drought period, we have plants like our acacia tree that let off tannin, which when there's a drought, anything downwind of this tannin starts excreting this tannin, and the kudus eat it and they drop down dead. It's just a way to protect themselves when there's a drought. So if there wasn't a fence, that kudu could move to another area upwind and eat higher quality or higher protein food in this drought area, which helps with the growth. So do you see my point where I'm getting at here is like, hence the reason we have had to go to this idea of aging animals through shape. And it's the way that all guides are guiding and looking for animals. And age is the biggest thing. We would like our clients to shoot the oldest animal. Your prettiest, massive, genetic, wide animal isn't necessarily your oldest animal. So often you guys will come out and hunt with a company, and a company has got select hunting areas and hunting properties where outfitters like myself and other outfitters have to stick by strict rules and strict laws of what the landowner is willing to hunt on their property. And the biggest thing that we struggle with is hunting a property where a farmer has put these restrictions on shooting impala, nyala, where they've got an abundance of these animals, but they wanting you to hunt out the inferior genetic or the not so beautiful or pretty shape that we are after. And that makes it difficult for a professional hunter as well, because you'll end up on this property where there are hundreds of nyala around because they've done extremely well. And the nyala and waterbuck also seems to be one of them where this has happened, where the price of the waterbuck hasn't changed since year dot. And what's happened is it's created an abundance in this area and this property. But there are poor genetics that need to be hunted out. So the farmer will tell us as guards, please don't shoot the flaring nyala bulls, which everyone wants to shoot. Shoot the straighter bulls because we want to keep the females bred by those flaring bulls. And it happened to me so often where you come around the corner and the guy's got a nyala on his package and a beautiful nyala, flaring nyala bull standing in front of me. And I cannot shoot that nyala bull with the client, as the landowner has told me I cannot shoot that. I must shoot a straight horned bull. So we look for the open, long, straight horned bull. And with a nyala, the shape that we go after is, when you get a side profile, guys, anything that's spiraled is the best way to judge if you've got a bit of length on it. So if you look at a nyala bull from the side profile, he will have this swoop back. And if we can get the horn to do a swoop back and up and flare, that's where we get our measurements from and our length. And that's where we want to get into that 24, 25, 26, up to the 28, which is your Roland Award stuff, getting right up there. That's what we're looking for. If a bull's got a very straight profile, he doesn't get length in him, because then he's got to rely on absolute mass to get the length. Because when you measure a spiral, it's got to be on the ridge and measure it all the way to the tip to get the length. So the same thing goes where we're hunting impala on a property, and if you have an impala turned sideways, he must have what we call the armchair, the front leg, the back and up. That's the shape we look for to get length. But when he turns front on at you, we call the goalposts have to be straight. And that's a mature impala. If he kicks out, even better. But from my experience, those that kick out don't have the armchair effect. And often you'll see guys shooting the armchair because they've seen the impala from side view and haven't had the opportunity to see him from front, and he slightly kicks in at the top. I myself have made that mistake as a professional hunter, and it's a great length impala, but he's not a old impala. Straight is age, flaring out is exception. And we often get put into these predicaments when hunting on these properties where, I want to say, landowners have given us limitations on what we can hunt. Shooting, I remember hunting a property where we were only allowed to hunt out of bachelor herds. We couldn't shoot out of herds. And this is where your guide has to be very careful of what he's doing if he wants to come back to the property and how he's wanting to conduct himself in the future. So listen to your guide when you come out to South Africa. He is there doing his job at the best of his ability under a lot of limitations that are put on him by outfitters and by the landowners that they hunt on. So let's dive into another interesting one to look at. A lot of guys come out and hunt a springbuck. So springbuck, we all go after as a professional hunter. We want the heart shape. So the top of the horns have to be pointing towards each other, and as long as they're hooked at the top, that's kind of what you think. And then you'll look at the growth rings. Are they hard? Are they soft? Anything with rings. A lechwe, a gemsbuck, or a gemsbuck as the American guys call it. We always have to look at the growth rings on the base of the horn to look for maturity, age. Those have to be hardened. Same with a waterbuck. A waterbuck, if you're looking at a waterbuck, you want him to be that beautiful ivory color nearly all the way to the end. And then again, look at the growth rings at the base, because you can find an exceptional waterbuck and he is actually dark still. He hasn't matured. Those horns haven't ivoried up nicely. So these are all just little things that we go after and look at specifically when we're going through herds of animals on your short I've hunted 5-day hunts. I've actually hunted 3-day hunts, and to your 10, 12-day safaris that you're out here. So me personally, if you guys are booking a trip to come out to South Africa, try and book a longer trip. It gives you more time for your professional hunter to go through these animals. And we all have these minimum amounts and sizes that we go after. The animal has to be no smaller than X and Y. Like bushbuck, guys are happy to go and shoot a 12-inch bushbuck ram for a client because they're difficult to hunt with clients. They need ample amounts of time to hunt them because they are lone animals. They live in the thick of stuff. Your hours that you can hunt them throughout a day are limited. It's early hours of the morning, late hours of the afternoon, and you got to spend a lot of time glassing for them. And then you are so busy chasing other species that you shorten that time up as well. So keep that in mind when you are starting to hunt the trickier animals. Don't fill your plate up so much when out there hunting. Rather select fewer animals and get your professional to hunt harder, looking for quality trophies like these beautiful warthogs behind me that I've got here. This is like once in a lifetime pigs, guys. You don't often get that. Guys go after 6 inches out the gum and bigger. That's what they're classing for trophies. Another tip is if you're hunting any of the straight horn small species like your steenbuck, your darker fall redbuck, any of those, the guys use the ears as the measurement of what they find ethical for them to hunt. And especially when you rush, the guys will be happy to shoot a foal redbuck an inch above his ears. Guys, a foal redbuck an inch above his ears is going to be like a 7-inch foal redbuck. You are wanting to shoot that 9 inches and up. That's really where you're getting into the age of things. So, keep that in mind. The same with darkers and stuff. They're all looking for that 3 inches and bigger, 4 inches and bigger, because 4.5 inches, I think, is Roland Award. Same with blesbuck. They're a lot more easier to judge if you've got a group of them and you're hunting out of big groups, looking for the big mature males, because that's a massive, massive herd animal. When you're hunting out of smaller herds, it's very, very tricky. That is an animal that gets extreme ground shrinkage, guys, if you're hunting a blesbuck, because of the way they are always presenting themselves. There's always skyline behind it. So also keep that in mind, because think of it this way. When we set up photographs for your memory to take back home, we always try and skyline the horns to elevate them, to show them off. And that's why they always look so massive in photographs compared to just looking at it lying on the ground. And that is a super important thing. If you're hunting anything like a gemspak or a gemspak, they are always, standing on a hill or, got a bit of blue behind them. And I've got a funny story here where another young guard was with us, and he was actually a Russian guy who had done his PH license, and he'd moved to South Africa and he started his own hunting business. And he said, rule of thumb, if a gemspak is eating and it's got its head on the ground and its horns stick up above its back, it's big enough to shoot. Well, that rule of thumb caught him out quite hectically, because young gemspak bull, I've been caught out with a young gemspak bull or any young gemspak, their bodies grow in proportion with their horns. So keep that in mind as well. So that's a very tricky animal where males and females are on the trophy list. Most places you'll shoot both. Your females are longer in horn. If you're wanting mass, you'll look at the males. And then again, you got to look at the bases to make sure that you're getting the age appropriate one. Because if you shoot a young one, you can walk up to it and grab the outer sheath and pull it off, and the actual horn is underneath. So keep that in mind when you're hunting gemspak in South Africa. What is the other one that's tricky? Oh, blue wildebeest. So the rule for blue wildebeest is anything that is past his ears when he's looking front on at you. So when his ears stick out, if he goes past his ears, that's a good bull. The biggest thing with them is color. Front of the head, same with the black wildebeest. They have to be dark between the eyes. If you're shooting anything which is slightly orange or yellow on the front of the head, it's immature. Black wildebeest, we always look for the drop, where the horn must come down eye level and then go up, and then make sure that his points go beyond his bosses. But you do have the odd one that you do hunt where the horns are almost level with the bosses, and what happens is that's normally a really old bull who's bloomed it off, but then we look for the definition and the cracks in the boss. So those are just a few tips of hunting some of the basic species out here in South Africa. And just something to keep in mind, ask the questions when you're out hunting with your professional hunter. How does he judge? And you will learn really, really quickly. But this is just something that you guys can go scroll through on the internet, have a look at a few photos. You can find loads of pictures of kudu, bushbuck, daka, anything, and have a look at what they've got there set up as their animals, their male, the mature animals. But when you look at it, it's going to be all down to the province you pick to hunt in, the country you pick to hunt in, and the professional hunter that you're hunting with, who will determine what they think is mature, old quality animals for you as a client to hunt. So guys, let's leave that one there. Just a few tips for those of you coming out to hunt in South Africa. And I hope you're enjoying these podcasts. Please, hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube, and follow us on Apple Podcast and on Spotify. So till later, guys. Cheers.